Every sports season in its own way is a campaign to put a team on a path towards winning. With that said, while winning, however you define that word, is the shared goal between all sports teams, at the end of the year, there typically can only be one champion. Our guest today lives and breathes creating winning campaigns in another arena. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Win, a show where we interview champions and trailblazers and ask questions to uncover and discover their championship traits for succeeding in sports, work, and life. Win is part of Grit, a pivotalmomentsmedia.com channel focused on breaking the stigma surrounding mental fitness in sports. Visit pivotalmomentsmedia.com for more episodes, content, and education on how we can tackle that challenge together. Our guest today, Christopher Lee, has more than 25 years of experience in political consulting, campaign management, communications, and developing marketing materials for candidates, national political party members, and labor organizations. Chris is a partner with Foresight Strategic and is an expert in political strategy, issue advocacy, and media relations, and has worked with top government officials, businesses, and teams around the country. Chris, we're really pleased to have you here. We're looking forward to this conversation and getting a different perspective on creating a winning culture. It's great to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see both of you. Great to meet you, Lee. And of course, it's always great to see you, JB.
Yeah, Chris, let's dive right in. The question that I think is on everybody's mind when we have someone of your experience and background is, what traits do you look for when you're choosing to work with a political candidate, their families and their close friends? Because it's really not just the candidate that you jump in with, right? You're in with the whole family.
Yeah, you are. You absolutely are. And it's often my wife, who is also in political consulting, and she is a billion years smarter than me, I can tell you, has told me, look, you have to convince the family of why this race is good, why this candidate's going to win, why the sacrifice that they're making. And make no mistake, it is a complete family sacrifice, be it financial or personal or political, right? I think the traits I look for are people that, not only have that kind of solid family who does do their research, so to speak, but the families that kind of gather together and say, okay, tell us how this race looks. Tell us how our guy can win, or our dad or mom, or whomever it is can win. But it ultimately always comes down to the candidate, right? Because the candidate themselves has to be that person who recognizes the most important thing. Running for office is not about them. It's not about them. It's about the folks they're going to work for and the people that they're responsible for ultimately when crises happen, right? It's not, and I love those candidates because they will get on the phone to raise money, an awful part of the job. They are not afraid to stand their ground on an issue where they know they're right, but at the same time willing to accept other inputs. And as before we started the show, you mentioned Ben Franklin. That's absolutely right. There are other inputs that really smart candidates take in and say, okay, I know where to separate the wheat from the chaff, right?
Can't live in a bubble. Yeah.
Right. And so they stay out of that bubble of everybody telling them how great they are and look at it and go, you know what? I didn't do X today. I didn't do Y today. I need to get better. And you're right about the sports connection is that the truly great athletes look at it, and I'll use Tom Brady since he's the greatest quarterback to play the game of football. And he, of course, was, a member of the New England Patriots for 20 years, which makes him even greater. But it's the reality of it is that Brady, for everything he did well, he looked at the mistakes he made, right, and said, this is where I need to get better. The best candidates I've ever worked for, win, lose, or draw, are the ones that turn around and say, you know what? I need to get better on this day. I didn't get on the phone enough to raise money. I made that mistake in that particular speech, or I didn't do X well enough. So now I'm going to get better.
Right.
So those are the candidates that I always know when they get to office are going to want to build those bridges with folks, not because it makes political sense, but because things have to get done. That's just bottom line.
Right. And equating this to sports, a huge analogy. It's awesome. I'm glad you brought up Brady. As an Eagles fan, I want to thank you for letting us win in 2018. That was a good year, but you took us in 2004, so I'll let you have that one for now.
That's very nice, very kind of you.
Listen, we always talk, you should have a good, healthy hatred for your own sports teams. In the Northeast, we understand that. Look, here's a great analogy from what you just said, right? We've all heard the Michael Jordan, how many shots he's missed, didn't make his high school basketball team, and how he used failure to learn. Kobe Bryant was the same way. We know Sidney Crosby, the same in hockey. Abraham Lincoln is a perfect example of an extremely high profile candidate that lost more than he won in his career, and ended up at the highest office in the country. And it became arguably the greatest president we've ever had by many people's mindset, right? So the failing to learn is a key component here in politics and in sports and life, right? And that is kind of the purpose of the show. The candidates that succeed. I mean, I'll ask you this kind of I doubt there's ever been a candidate that's been undefeated, right? Does that ever even happen? Have you heard of anything like that?
Yeah, I in just off the top of my head, I can't think of any.
Right. That's my point.
I have a couple that are on our client list that haven't been defeated.
Right.
But it's been a matter of the fight was close enough where, they could have lost.
Right. And I should have said too, in a long-term political career, because you're right. If someone's running for the first time and they win, obviously they've never been defeated. But I imagine even when you win, you have to learn.
Very few. John McCain lost twice. Once running for the presidency. Right. And McCain got older, he got wiser. Joe Biden lost 3 separate times for the presidency. I think it was 88, 92, and then again 2008 when he ran. But it's that resiliency of the person that kind of sharpens their experience, sharpens their skills. And I've said it repeatedly, and believe me, it's happened to me. I've lost more than I've won. Right. But in each loss, I think I get more out of it. Right. Largely because I know what I'm not going to do next time.
I think most winners have lost more than they probably let on in their, you know what I mean? Like the best winners do that. Look, even Brady's a good example. He's won a lot, but you look at his life, from the start, he's lost plenty too. And anyway, JB, I should probably let you talk on this episode too at some point. Apologies.
This is great. I love all this. I'll tell just a couple quick stories of Chris. He was at the gym one day and had his Red Sox hat on, and I think somebody was busting his chops a little bit about Boston. And I think he said to him, he goes, "Yeah, Boston, home of freedom, the internet, and champions," and shut the guy right up. So that was pretty good, Chris. And then, since we are, our show's about like mental health and resilience, I'll tell another quick story. And I don't even know if Chris realizes this, but it was a couple of years ago, but I was walking around the gym aimlessly. I was at a tough time in my life, tough period. And, Chris really didn't know me. He saw me and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And I was like, "Nothing." He's like, we have a wine tasting event. I want you to meet me and my wife and friends there." And just like that, I showed up at this wine tasting event with him at this place. And right away, I just felt life. He saw me, saw I wasn't in a good place, and found that way. So that's that observation about you, Chris. So I want to thank you for that, because you're a big brain, deep thinker, as I like to call it. However, I seen that grit side of you. I saw it at the gym. That's what our channel's about. Can you talk about like this toughness and resiliency and how you use it in your daily life? We talked about it a little bit before the show started, but I know it's important to you.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I've had it throughout my life pretty damn easy. I mean, look, I grew up in a great family. One of 7 kids. We've had our challenges. We have mental health challenges where I have a brother who's schizophrenic, my oldest brother, who, was intent on doing harm to me, even though I was his favorite little brother. And he was the one who always looked out for me, and watching that kind of thing, him collapse mentally, does something to your soul. It does something to your ability to function on a day-to-day basis. And so JB's right. It's those people that reach out to you afterwards. I had friends around I had my older brother, Patrick, who I credit with probably doing more to save my life and making it better than anybody. And he is still my, he's still my go-to person in talking to that stuff. But when stuff gets really bad and I feel it's really bad, there's always a text from my brother, Patrick, saying, some stupid line from Family Guy, because we laugh like idiots about Family Guy, right? I don't know what it is. I'm 52 years old. That shit's still fun.
Well, it's because you guys are from Quahog and you know it. But that's
I understand it. But to JB's point, I think what happens when those things in your life happen, or professionally you're having a challenge. There's, about 10, 15 years ago, I had a really bad professional challenge where I thought I wasn't going to be able to continue in my career. I thought this is the end. I got to find something else to do. And Emily, who JB knows quite well, was there. And it's those are the things that I think when you really consider your life in total, you're very, very, very fortunate. You are look at that. And I've had those challenges, but yet I've always been able to rely on folks
right.
who can pull me up from the depths. The people that I love are folks that are resilient when no one else is there to help them be resilient, to stand back up and keep moving forward when nothing seems to be going your way. And I think that there's a few candidates that I've worked with over the years that are like that, right. That have taken punches and have had to motor through motor through those swells with no one else at the till but them. And so I think that those traits of folks that not only know that they have great support behind them, but the folks that don't have support yet keep getting up every day and keep moving forward are the toughest human beings I've ever met.
Right.
But Lord, it's a lot easier to do it when you have great friends. Like even when I was having tough times at the gym, if I see JB, there's something about this cat that just makes you get off your ass and do your job. And I don't know if it's the fear of he's going to make me do 20 more push-ups, or if it's his ability as a leader and as someone who has been through probably the worst travails of any human being, makes you get up and do the next thing, right? Because that's what it is, right? When a candidate is down and having a very difficult day, they've been hit bad by the press. It's not about it's not about giving a big speech and going X, Y, or Z, saying this is going to get better. It's getting them to do the next thing that day.
Right.
Whether that means getting up and making more calls, or simply going to bed and going, you know what, that's the next thing. I got to rest, rejuvenate, get the hell up and do it all again the next day. And that's to me what those great traits are, right? The people who are willing to get up and still do the next thing to keep moving forward.
One of my favorite JB quotes, and JB, I know you're on the show, but I don't mind complimenting you here, is "we climb." He ends a lot of conversations like "we climb." And it's funny because JB, when you first started saying that to me, I remember thinking like, that's right. We're climbing to this point. That's the goal. Right. And it came to me later on. I was like, there's no peak to this mountain. We're going to just keep climbing, get up and keep going. Exactly. And I love it. I love that. Okay. But as he's saying, JB, there's just something about you that you're in my head is there's no top at this mountain. I just, I can hear you in my head saying, but yeah, to your point, man, Chris, it's great that you said that, because resiliency and grit are so important. To share a quick story with you. Similar upbringing, really good family. I remember to make myself vulnerable to our own audience, JB, I don't even know if you know this story. I was a head coach at 23 years old and did a great job. I had a great team. We were like a national contender. And after my second year, I was wrongfully accused of taking money from the program. All right. Like, now I'm actually going to preface, I was completely cleared of this. It didn't happen. There was a complete backstabbing situation. Like it's irrelevant. My point is, I was innocent. And I remember wanting to give up. I remember I was so devastated by this, because when you coach kids, college kids especially, they become your family. Like that's how close you get. And the team didn't know, like they were completely torn over this. They didn't know if it was true or not. Sure. And it was going to take time to clear the name, right? It wasn't something that I could snap my fingers. And I made the decision at that time that, I'd probably have to step away as head coach. Like there was no road away from that, just because the team needed to be unified And it wasn't right for me. It wasn't about me, long story short. But I remember I was on the phone with my father and I was in so much pain. And I said, Dad, maybe I should just kind of give up and let him have it and walk away so I don't have to deal with it. Right. Because it's like, it's not fair to the players. And I remember my dad said to me, I was actually kind of surprised how strong he was. He goes, no, he goes, what you're going to do is you're going to fight, you're going to clear your name, and then you can make that decision. And I'm so thankful he said that, because I was ready to stop. I really was. And he said, you will see this through to the end and clear your name, which I did. And then you can make the decision. And it was one of the defining professional moments of my life of, no, we don't stop. And it was because of that, Chris, to your point, that I feel like I developed the ability to do that now on my own most of the time, because that voice is implanted in my head. What I do think about for both of you, and JB, I actually kind of throw a question at you with this. I think about those kids who don't have two parents or don't have a parent, and that when they go home, it's hell. That sports are their escape and school is their escape because there's nothing for them at home and they don't get the messages and they have to just figure this out on their own. And I'll be honest with you, you get into inner city environments, a lot of them don't make it out of there because they search out groups that'll help them, gangs and other things, and sports teams too. That's how important, by the way, if you're a youth sports coach in the city, you are integral to these kids' lives. But JB, what I was going with this, the military teaches you to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, that resilience. Are there tactics there that you can tell to Chris and I of how you do that? Or is it just a mentality of just, no, get up, next man up, we climb?
Well, I think the part about, mental fitness and mental resilience is it's a learned trait. Now, some people learn it quicker because of their upbringing. Right. If you have a tough upbringing, you gotta learn it. But just like both of you, I came from a middle-class family in Pittsburgh, great mom and dad, everybody worked hard. And, my first taste of resilience was, getting knocked down in special operations training, been like, oh my gosh, what can you do to fight the next day? And then you just have to shorten the window. I mean, there's times Chrissy's even say, like, we go to the gym and I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it this hour. Okay, let me make it 5 minutes on that clock. Right. So you shorten the window for that. And then of course it's, you lean on each other. Chris said something very, very important about, learning to lean on yourself. There's a special operations course called SEER, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. It's a prisoner of war school. What do? They isolate you, right? Because when you isolate somebody, you can break your spirit. And that's why this COVID, these lockdowns, whether right or wrong, they're killing people's spirit. And that's why we have to get communities and families and friends, back going. And, right. Like Boris Sapone, who owns the gym there, right? Like trying to get the gym back open, or when it's not open, trying to bring communities together. So, right. Yeah. So part of that is from a training perspective is, fight the short fight, make it the next 5 minutes. Right. Okay, I made it 5 minutes, make it 10 minutes. And if you look at it at that. The other part is that, combat related, I never thought about being killed. Okay. Because you can't even put that in your mind. I never even thought about like, oh, am I going to get shot at today? Yes, I'm going to get shot at. I expect it. Right. And so you got to look at things that way and hey, what can I do? What can I do to push forward? And then what are you doing is every time you have an action, somebody's watching, and that may be the only thing you need. And I go back to my initial story, how Chris saw me walking around the gym aimlessly. I probably didn't look aimlessly to anybody else, but I looked aimlessly to him because he saw it. He looked through it. So that's all part of it, what you have to do and look for. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. What I take from that, JB, is that this is something that, some people have, but you can also train, and the people that you surround yourself are very important to having it, right? If you surround yourself with people that are woe is me all the time, what do you think is going to happen to you? And there's plenty of people like that. But you surround yourself with overachievers and people that want to go for it. Like, that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast with you, JB, is we're just surrounded by great people all the time, Chris, yourself included. Like, you can't leave this show unmotivated. If you do, something's wrong.
If you do, we'll find you and hunt you down.
That's what Chris was talking about. Yeah.
To be fair, JB does that. He actually, he'll find you and he'll hunt you down and keep you moving right. forward.
Well, listen, anytime the phone rings and it says JB Spizzo is calling, your brain goes, what did I know? What do I need to be prepared?
A little bit.
Yeah. No,
I don't need caffeine to get started. JB
right.
just calls me.
Right. With that said, JB, I love it when you call that. Look, Chris, back to you. The next question for you. When you manage a campaign, we said this earlier, you have to manage the candidate and also the staff. Now, there's a lot of noise, right? People telling you what you need to do from everyone involved, the media, the candidate, the staff, et cetera. And as the campaign nears its close, it might be a neck to neck race. You know, people get tired, they're stressed. And then when the candidate wins, the real work begins. You might even go a different direction. That would be your off season, I guess. Right. And JB will agree with me on this. It sounds a lot like a pro sports season, right? So how do you control that, keep morale high, focus where it needs to be in the grand mission of that environment?
Yeah, I think so much of it in a campaign, like it is with any team, it's organic, right?
Right.
It's often that you find folks that come together and work on campaigns. And my partner Sean, he and I went to work on a campaign together, and now we're working together in this business simply because we are a wonderful opposite mix, right?
Right.
But keeping staff motivated is hard, right? It's harder today than it ever has been. But it's often good leaders, good managers know, again, it's not about them. It's not about whether they're in charge or not. It's about everybody having some kind of ownership of the process,
Right.
knowing full well that there's only one person who can lead the platoon, so to speak.
Right. Coaches, listen up, coaches.
Right. It is literally about building a group that is going to, when it's 10 o'clock at night and they're dead tired and they have to keep writing, or they have to keep putting together a mail piece or whatever it is, they keep going. And for some reason that they forget that they're exhausted,
right,
mentally and physically. Right. But it's also those moments where you literally in the middle of the day go, man, let's get the hell out of here. We got to go grab lunch somewhere. Right. It's trying to build that camaraderie in any way you can. And while it doesn't always work, the best campaigns I found are the ones where we want to see each other every single day. We want to be in the office working. We want to do what's next.
Right.
And we want to keep fighting, not just because we love the candidate, but because we know the ideals for which we got into this business for are still relevant. They still matter. And despite all the cynicism that we see, and again, 25 years of doing this, I still get up every day with hope for something better.
That's awesome.
And so when I go to work on a campaign, that's what I want to instill in a team. It's like, look, we're not doing this just because, because the pay's not great all the time. We're doing this because there is a something bigger than yourself attached to it. And even if you're running a city council race, there is something about that. Like, look, Barack Obama was a state senator, wins a state senate seat, gets absolutely annihilated in ill-conceived chance to take out an icon of Chicago politics, Bobby Rush. That not only doesn't deter him, but he keeps the same staff he had for all these races together. And so these folks have not just followed the candidate, they've followed each other from race to race to race. And because they know the chemistry between that group is a result of shared experiences, shared trials, the ability to take those hits and everybody collectively get back up off the mat, right? And that's what good candidates do, but that's what good managers do. They keep, when you take a hit, you take a step back and you go, look, you lost. What are you going to do? But guess what? There's another battle to fight. There's another chance to get, as JB says, there's another chance to get up and climb. And that's what I try to do. Is it always successful? No. Personalities are what personalities are. People are individuals. But a really good manager knows that, again, like the candidate, it's not about them. They're trying to do something bigger. They're trying to do something more important, and they can't do it themselves.
Right.
I love it. And Chris, you talked about, I didn't know that thing about Obama's campaign, and because a lot of people just would have dusted them and got a new group, but he stuck with them. Wow, that's pretty impressive. And it goes right into my question about, you talk about that group bond, that group dynamics, shared experiences, shared goals. you have to find avenues to, win the day, as we like to say. There's a lot of up and coming athletes and coaches, emerging business leaders that listen to this show. Put that together for them. What are these, few things they can do to win that day?
Yeah, I think it's recognizing that there is another day. That's the first thing I have to remind myself when I don't win a pitch. I have to remind myself there's another client, there's another campaign, there's someone, and particularly if it's one you really want to win because the candidate is good, that they have the right intentions, that they want to do the right things, and that's often challenging in politics. It is to make sure that you can't forget about it. Actually, I don't want people to forget about the failures. I want them to remember that they didn't do well this day and why they didn't do well this day. But more importantly, keeping that in the back, somewhere in the back of your mind of, okay, I didn't do well because I knew I didn't do this, I didn't do this, and I didn't do this. So guess what? We're not going to do that again. And I think while it seems, I'm not trying to be harsh in any way. I'm simply trying to say you have to get back up. You have to keep going. And the thing that is always in the back of mind, is always in the front of mind, is there's going to be another day. Until I stop breathing, there is going to be another day, and there's going to be another way to either correct mistakes or make something better. And I think the other part of it too is I don't take it. The older I get, I don't take it as personally. I don't take the failure as personal. I don't take when I get admonished by a client personally. Or when they feel like they failed, I simply say, look, this is what's going on. And I've learned to, I think, cope with the realities of these mistakes are going to be made. How quickly do you recover from them? But more importantly, when they're made, that you make sure that you minimize the mistakes you make the next time, right? And more importantly, when you're talking about candidates, and believe me, there are some that just are bigger divas than you'll see on the Vegas Strip. And I've told you this a billion times. The really good candidates are, you handle them differently. There's one young woman who is probably going to be the governor of Arizona one day. And she is younger, but she has a sense of the world today is not going to be the same world tomorrow. It's going to be a different environment. I'm going to be able to manage things a great deal better. But as as someone who's older who's been through these proverbial battles, I think that I just am a lot calmer. And so I hope that all these athletes, when they have these kind of bad days on the pitch or bad days on the field or whatever it is, they get up and go, well, I'm going to get up tomorrow and we're going to try and do this again. But more importantly, that you're never going to fail to get up. Right. Right.
It's funny, Chris, because I'm laughing here because I'm thinking of myself as a younger athlete, and I'm thinking about a lot of the young athletes that, they'll get very angry or physically angry when they lose. And don't get me wrong, there are some people that can motivate themselves a lot with that approach. But the older I got, the calmer I got. And I remember one time a young person asked me, we lost, and they said, why aren't you more angry about the loss? Like, you're the coach, why aren't you more pissed off that we lost? And I came back older, and I said, well, what will that accomplish? And they looked at me and they didn't have an answer. I said, what will being mad, stressed, and angry do to help me focus us the right direction? Right. I said, all that will do is distort my focus and make me make bad decisions. I said to him too, I also don't make decisions when I'm excited after a win, just to keep it even, right? After a win, you're invincible, right? You're wonderful. You're super happy. I don't make decisions when I'm excited, and I don't make decisions when I'm devastated, unless I have to, right? So my point is that, same thing with the campaign trail. And just so everybody listening, like, everything Chris is saying, you can apply it to sports. If he says politics, campaign, anything, you can carbon copy this over to sports. It's the same thing. Like the grace to analyze and look, and look, there are times to get angry. There are times to get a little ferocious, especially to motivate the team. But at the end of the day, you have to have clear thinking. Like you said, you lose a campaign, you've been there before. What do you get up the next day? Going back to the we climb thing again. I said, there's no peak to the mountain. You're given your time to climb the mountain. That's it. You got the time, you got your life to climb.
Yep.
And you're either going to be focused on when's this going to end or how high can I get? That's the difference. Right. And when your time's up, your time's up. That's it. You got to enjoy the process. Or as JB always says, what is it? Embrace the suck. Right. But you can make
Absolutely.
that fun for yourself. Like how many athletes you hear say that part of it is the gift. It's not the trophies. It's that journey is the gift. And if you wait too long, and I imagine this is true in any professional profession, right? You're going to let your life go by and then you'll be retired. You're not going to know what to do with yourself. So anyway, I just thought that was a great analogy. I'll give you a chance to respond to that if you wanted to before I jump to the next question. Apologies.
No, look, I think, this is going to sound insane when I say this. So
I love it. Let's say it. Yeah.
And I know JB, so it's kind of appropriate, right? So, but I enjoy road trips. I enjoy them. And I enjoy them not because we're going somewhere different. It's that I am freed from, in some sense, sitting in one place, sitting in one chair. It allows me to think a little bit deeper about what I'm doing, where I'm going, how I'm getting there, and enjoying that process. And it's I say that because in campaigns, you're going 100 miles an hour with your ass on fire. There's no question about it. In really hardcore campaigns, that's what you do. But at the same time, when I was younger, I didn't appreciate those moments, and so now I have to look back on them. And so now, as I'm older, and you don't have to do this when you're older. The really great athletes know they're enjoying and remembering those moments.
Right.
That, dude, remember when we had to go put up signs in that thunderstorm in Kentucky during that Senate race? We did that. It was insane. I actually did that with a friend of mine, Mark. We were, I was helping out in a Senate race. This is years ago. It's back in the 90s. And we actually we're getting signs or delivering signs. And we had to put out signs in this thunderstorm. It was mental. It's like, what am I doing here? But it's stuff like that you remember. It's getting on a campaign bus and traveling 2 hours. It's literally doing things that are seemingly incongruous to the job.
Right.
But you remember doing just stupid shit. I mean, to be perfectly blunt. Sorry to use the language.
No, you're fine. I'm fond at times. I've done this with people that are in strife, myself included. This is negative times and positive times. But I say to myself, one day this will all be a memory. Like no matter what I'm feeling, one day this will all be a memory. They're just moments, right? They're not your life. You're not defined by one moment most of the time. And it's funny because, like you're saying, even in the rough times or the suck, I'll say it for you, JB. I remember being in college. We had a Marine come out. And he would do off-ice training, and we had to crawl through this football field. It was covered in goose shit, just covered in it. And making us crawl.
Good training.
And here's the thing, we all had to wear white clothes, and we're covered in shit. I mean, I don't know why I had the clairvoyancy at the time because it sucked, but I remember thinking like, this is awesome. I remember thinking that we took pictures. I just knew it. Like, I'm going to remember this the rest of my effing life. And we had other players that weren't like, this is ridiculous. They were going to get sick, and it's a mentality of like, no, man, I'm embracing this moment. This Marine is putting me through. And like, by the way, you could never do that today. You could never do that today. I'm so thankful for that moment. Cause like you just said, Chris, the rest of my life, I always come back to this. Yeah. But did you crawl through goose shit across a football field? It puts everything in perspective from an athletic point of view.
That's right.
So and JB, by the way, all this it's nothing compared to your training and your experience. And I want to give
it's those hardships though that that you go through that you remember.
Right.
And when you lean on those experiences and you're like, yeah, you know what, it's not so bad.
Right.
And I think that's the importance that we're telling coaches and leaders today is that, you put these experiences together. I like what Chris said about, don't let the highs get too high. Don't let the lows get too low, man. You got to kind of stay even keeled there because there's a lot of things coming at you and you have to think through things. I know, like when I wanted to get a client so bad that I could taste it, it never happened. Right. Because you just like, God, I just want to
it's meant to happen, it'll happen.
I'm
a big believer in that.
My wife says that all the time. If it's supposed to happen, it's going to happen.
Yeah. I when I was growing up professionally and athletically, I was gotta turn over every rock, gotta see what's under every rock. And here's the thing, there is some truth to that, right? That in terms of the hard work and making opportunities for yourself. But at the same time, and I had to learn this, and athletes, if you're listening to this, listen, young coaches, if you're on a coaching path, listen to me, right? This one's important. You might have a dream job or a dream team you want to play for. Trust yourself enough that if you don't get it, that you're still going to create opportunities for yourself and find something else. Look, first time I applied to work at the NHL, didn't get the job. Second time I applied, I did. Right. First time I tried to be a head coach, didn't get the job. I'm sorry. There were plenty of head coach jobs I didn't get, but I always seem to find another way to get in. And what I learned as I got older is, wow, I'm resourceful enough, right? I'm resourceful enough to find my way forward. It's not a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness that a lot of people miss. There's always opportunities if you're willing to find them. JB's like that. Chris, you're like that. I'm sure candidates have to be like that. But let me go to the next question, because this kind of leads in, right? I'm looking forward to this question, Chris.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
I don't want to mistake being the highs and lows as kind of not like giving a damn. In my business and in sports, you have to.
Totally.
There are moments where I have literally screamed to the candidate to get their heads out of, as my father would say, rectal defilade. And and to do that, to make that clear. Now, the screaming I did 20 years ago at someone and the kind of screaming I do today is markedly different.
Right.
It is markedly different because of the experiences I've had.
Probably lack of ego in it now, right?
Right. And that's the other thing. That's just going to perfect lead in is like, I don't have the ego I used to, but I still have the passion for what I do.
Totally.
And I know when something's right and when something is wrong.
I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
And that's what you have to convey to folks, but in a way that they go, oh, I understand that from my perspective. It is not, and again, remembering in any team that you're running or any team you're part of, it's not about you.
Right.
It's never been about you. You can score 40 points a game. And if you finish last in your conference, well, that's great. You finished last in your conference. Well done, you. I mean, it doesn't really matter because the team didn't succeed. And frankly, you're regarded as often, a prima donna, a diva, whatever the hell it is. And that reputation follows you. And you don't want to be that person because ultimately the opportunities dry up. In my case, the clients dry up. It is your ability to be seen as the adult in the room, the calm voice. But when I get passionate about something, my hope is that people go, well, that's out of character for Chris. I think we ought to sit up and listen. All right.
You know what's funny, Chris? You just made me realize this by something you just said. When you're young, you think you need that ego to stay passionate about the sport or whatever. And as you get older, you realize you didn't need the ego at all because the passion is actually all you needed.
That's right.
And it's funny. I heard this great line not too long ago from an elderly gentleman. And he said, you spend the first third of your life trying to impress other people. You spend the second third of your life really not caring. And then you spend the third third of your life realizing nobody cared either.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So it's like you care what everybody thinks of you, then you really don't care what everybody thinks of you, and then you realize nobody really cared to begin with. And it's really. I remember thinking if I can get to that point way earlier, man, it's going to be a different life. And it's true. Right. It's true. It just made me think of that. A lot of young athletes have an ego like, I'm great. That's fine. But we've interviewed so many top level athletes and coaches, professionals. Every one of them says, when we ask them, well, what separates the best athletes? Like, what is it? It's never the talent. It's never the skill. It's the passion for the game. It's the character of the person. Obviously, they have talent. And there are a few people out there with God-given unbelievable talent. But even they have the passion and the love for the game. Because I'll tell you what, everyone listening, there are other Sidney Crosbys, Tom Brady's, Michael Jordans out there that never make it. But they were good enough talent-wise, but they never make it because of their character and their mindset and their inability to overcome adversity. 100%. They're out there, right? These people don't get there just because of their skill.
Do you remember the movie Bull Durham?
course. Candlesticks, man. You gotta get the candlesticks.
Right. So Kevin Costner has one of the best lines, I think, that I've ever heard, and because it's of its universal application. He said Nuka Lelouch had $1 million arm and a 5-cent head.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of athletes who are incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, are often, they got a 5-cent head, and not because it's often because they don't break out of the fact that, oh, by the way, there's always someone that's going to be better,
right?
Or always someone that's going to do it better. The minute you realize that, you force yourself, the really great ones get up and go, someone's going to come along and take my crown. So I got to get up and do what's next.
Tom Brady's an amazing example of that. Just physicality alone. The guy realized, I'm getting older. I have to do it. Something completely reinvented and reinvigorated the fitness industry for himself with band workouts and the science behind it. Played till he was 45 years old. I mean, incredible, right? But that's a guy who says, yeah, I need to change, right? I need to find a way forward. He was the best of the best. I don't disagree with you on that. And yeah, man, it's a phenomenal point that you're making. I played with a guy. He had the hardest shot I've ever seen, ever, NHL down, and he never made it just because he couldn't deal with the adversity of the situation. He couldn't deal with getting cut from teams. Right. He was never taught to do that. And I'm going to say it again. He had the hardest shot. This guy would take shots, JB. He would take shots, hit goalies in the head, and they would be concussed, like every time. Like the goalie would dive out of the way. Never made it. $1 million arms, but I don't want to say he had 5-cent brain, but he didn't have the resiliency built up to move forward. All right, let me keep going here because this is a question I was excited to ask you. Right, when you look at pro sports, becoming the head coach of a major New York City team, let's just take, say, New York football for now, a lot different than becoming the head coach of a rural team, Indianapolis, right? Just to paint a picture here. They're very different experiences with different factors. That's why you always hear, can that guy handle the New York media, right? That's a prerequisite for becoming a New York coach. So when you manage a big city race versus a rural race, I would think that there's a huge difference in how you approach the campaign. So how do you factor that in when choosing a job and then choosing the staff and supporting structure for that job?
Well, I think, it's, again, using the old baseball adage, you throw the ball, you hit the ball, catch the ball, right?
Right.
And I think that that's universally applied. I often think that, if you take a big city job, I think that that's more perception than it is reality. It's that there are reporters who are just as ruthless in Indianapolis as they are in New York. I've dealt with a dozen different media markets, New York, LA included. And while we have that perception of them being big city reporters, I often think it's the local people in these kind of smaller communities in these, let's say it's Tucson versus LA or San Francisco. It doesn't matter. The ruthlessness of what they write and how that's seen by voters it has the same impact. And I think what coaches have to look at is that while media is incredibly important and they have a great and important job to do themselves, they have a perspective, and particularly when it comes to sports. I think it's often, believe it or not as prominent an issue as people wanted to believe in politics, but it's ultimately what they write has impact. I don't care if it's a small town newspaper or the New York Times. It is impacts are relative. And so what you have to do as a candidate, if you're running, let's say you're running for mayor of New York, you just have to look at that and go, okay, so these people think this about me. I'm going to be convinced. I'm pretty sure that narrative is in some cases built in by X, Y, or Z, or impacted by their personal feeling on how the city or that council district looks. Now, your ability to control the narrative is largely predicated on staying calm, staying focused, and knowing that keeping your entire team on that same path, right? And forgetting the surrounding noise, because you can't. It's my mother used to tell me, affect the things that you can, and then let the rest of that nonsense go.
Right.
right? She told me that from the time I was like 10 years old and I was struggling in Little League. She told me that all the time. And she also said, again, there's no substitute for age and experience. And so the older I get, the more I look at it and I say, okay, I can control this, this, and this. My team can control this, this, and this, meaning what we raise, how we talk about our candidate or the issue, and more importantly, how we communicate to those folks who are the voters, right? And I tell candidates all the time, it's about votes and it's about raising money.
Right.
The rest of it, that's what you can control. The rest of it is not anything you can control. And whether the media is right or wrong on any given day, you still can't control that. You can try and spin the story, but ultimately it's going to be, voters are going to look at who you are as a person, whether or not they can see you in the course of their 18-hour-a-day lives, right? And whether or not they can relate to the kind of individual that who they see on the campaign trail is hopefully going to be better when they become that elected official. Because
Right.
Keep in mind, I say this all the time, campaigns aren't about necessarily policy. They are to some degree, but they're largely about politics. They're largely about how your worldview connects with other voters' worldview, and whether or not you can convince voters that your worldview is going to be, their worldview is going to be best supported by how you go about your day-to-day as an elected official.
I want to throw in an extra question if it's okay.
Sure.
I got to pick your brain about this, and I am going to equate this kind of to sports, because look, the sports media is just as ruthless. and
Yeah.
I'm sure we have some coaches that deal with that, but the media, like free press is super important. It's incredibly important. And there's so much focus on the gotcha moment now that,
Yes.
it's actually painful, because it gets away sometimes from like what I really just want some good reporting. I don't really want to know the gotcha side all the time. And, I'll give you two high profile candidates just to keep it even. Again, and just to preface for the audience, I am not at all trying to get into politics. I'm just using these as examples. But, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, when they were running for president in the 16 and 20 elections, respectively, I watched Donald Trump, whether you love him or hate him, take atomic bombs of gotcha moments and survive that in an incredible fashion. Just things that nobody else could survive. And at the same time, Joe Biden, I remember in the primaries thinking, man, he's leaving this place early. He's got to be done, right? And he's president. And both those men became president. You know what I mean? Like with these incredible hits. So I think it goes back to what you just said of knowing what you can control, moving forward, right? But from a press level, we are turning politics into sports in the sense of pick a team, and you have to hate the other team. And that really bothers me, right? This is where I'm equating it to sports, Chris. I remember a really wise coach taught me this. I was coaching football. You want to kill the other team. You want to win the game, right? And after the game, a lot of football teams pray after the games. And this gentleman had his team pray to thank the other team, win, lose, or draw.
Right.
The attitude was, thank you for giving us an opponent. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for the ability to compete. I know that's probably like a kind of like a little two shoe sounding, but it's like, I just want to know what your thoughts on, or how we can get not just the country, but just ourselves back to a point where it's like, I disagree with you in every way possible, but we're on the same team here. Right. Do you know what I'm asking? Because
I do. And
yeah.
It's an issue that, like, I understand it completely. And
yeah.
Look, my mother also had another great saying that, again, she is, although she's passed, she still has an enormous influence over my life. And I suspect always will. I think she said to me, you are the master of the unspoken and a servant to the spoken. And when she got all Brooklyn on me, and she did that frequently, and I don't know why, it was more me than anybody else of the 6-7 kids that we had. She said, the minute it's out of your mouth, your ass owns it.
Yeah.
And the problem for Donald Trump is, my hope was when he won, he would forestall any expectation of who he was on TV and become Ronald Reagan.
Right.
What he did was become the guy on TV because that's who he knew.
Right.
So
Even though his inauguration speech was JFK, I thought, and I agreed with you, I thought maybe he was going to go that way. He had a great inauguration speech, I thought, and then
Well,
of course,
again, there's the public persona versus the policy
yeah,
too. And
right,
yeah.
but see,
And I'm not, that
politics
wasn't a
is-
defense, by the way. I'm just
Yeah,
talking
you know.
generally.
I get
Yeah.
it, but politics is perception, right?
Exactly.
The person who knew that best was Ronald Reagan. He understood how to convey a message of hope and unity. And to be fair, Trump's inauguration speech, if you compare it against all in total to all the other ones, wasn't actually great. It was more divisive than people believe, largely because this is what, as Lee quite correctly pointed out, he thought he had to pick a team.
Right.
When in fact, he was running the team. And therein is the difference, right? Good coaches, good candidates, they know they're running the team, and each team member is an individual. And you're trying to bring those individual units together, individuals together as a unit to function for the greater good. And having been in politics for so many years, when an incumbent loses, it's largely because what's happened is they've created a perception that they are this character,
Right.
and they have picked a team, and the rest of them can just, hey guys, go run laps. And that's the difference, right? I had hoped he would be Reagan and pick and make sure he was the one running the team. The difference is that because so many who get into politics today on both sides think this is, some version of the West Wing or Madam Secretary, and forget, by the way, it's not.
Yeah.
People,
There's no
everybody has
script here. Yeah.
Everybody has different ideas and different opinions.
Right.
And how you meld those together as a functioning unit, in this case, a functioning country of 300 million plus people, is a very challenging environment. And look, say what you want about Obama, say what you want about John McCain. I never had a doubt that either one of them, regardless who had won, would have the best interest of the team in mind. Their politics does stop at the White House door when it comes to crises that have an impact on the greater good. I think the problem for Donald Trump, and look, you can see it in focus groups in these battleground states that he lost. Why he lost was he scared the living daylights out of people because they weren't sure he would be on their team when it came down to it. And that's the problem, right? The worst presidents, Jimmy Carter, people didn't know what team he was on. He was too busy worrying about the White House tennis courts than he was about passing legislation that was going to get us out of, at the time, one of the worst recessions the country had seen since the Great Depression.
Right.
Again, Trump, and look, I think regardless of your politics, you can't argue the fact that he didn't manage well. He forgot that he had cliques running things rather than going, look, Abraham Lincoln had people that hated him on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
I don't know if hate's the word.
No,
but they didn't
hate. Look, I always say, just real quick, I always say
Edwin
this about Abraham
Stanton,
Lincoln.
for example.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln's always a good example. I just tell people he was the greatest president ever. Yeah, but half the country hated him so much they left, and he was assassinated. Like you got to remember, like the historical perspective is that he's the greatest president of all time, and he may very well be. I mean, he's obviously up there. But if you go back to the 1860s, that's not the perception at all. You know what I mean? So
well, but keep in mind, using that, the reason why was the previous president hadn't done much to unite the country, hadn't done what Jackson had done in saying, I'm going to end nullification in South Carolina. You're not John Calhoun. You're not playing this game with me, right? And that's a guy who said this is for the greater good of the nation. Right. I think Lincoln, actually, the reason why he's a great president is because he saw the greater good of the nation. Right. I would argue, and going back to Obama, Obama winning in 2008 was a great historical thing for this country. It set this country on a different path. Yeah. But to me, being reelected in 2012 is the greater victory for this country. We took all the awful things that has happened to African Americans in this country and the way we've treated that entire community, and voters transcended that and brought him back into the Oval Office. And let's be clear, Mitt Romney is no Trumper. He's not that guy. Neither was John McCain, certainly. but I never had a doubt that either one of those people, all three of them, would have had nothing but the best interests of the country,
Right.
politics aside, in mind,
Right.
when, as my father often said, shit hits the fan.
Right.
So, and I think good leaders, as again, my dad said, leadership is a situational event sometimes. And JB being in combat has probably seen that more than either one of us have. But the good leaders remember, the good coaches remember that there are 25 individuals sitting in this training room. I have to meld them into a unit where they may not like each other day to day, but they'll go kill for each other.
Coaches, listen up. Coaches,
again,
listen up. Yeah.
Using my mother, she said, when you're in the house, you guys can beat the living hell out of each other. You can break each other's arms. I don't care. The minute you leave the house, you stand together.
Right.
And you fight as a unit, or you have each other's backs. And I think what Trump failed to do is have the impression that ultimately, as president, he had everybody's back.
Right.
Right. And that's why an incumbent with his numbers and his war chest should have beaten any Democrat who walked the stage. The reason why is ultimately he picked, as you said, Lee, he picked a team.
Right.
And that was his mistake. He picked a team, and instead of recognizing that the team he picked wasn't the best one, he should have said, look, I don't care that you're on this team and you up-elect me. It's important and I appreciate it, and I'm glad you're part of the team. But ultimately, I now got to talk to the other tens of millions of Americans who thought I was a complete buffoon.
And that's what we need more of right now in every avenue of society. It's not just politics, it's people. It's, as you said, JB, people coming out of their houses for the first time. Are you the type of person who's going to welcome them back into society, or tell them to go back inside, don't cut me off in traffic? And I just want to say one thing real quick, and JB, I'd love to throw it to you, to our audience. And I do this whenever we talk about anything political. We mentioned several different candidates across the political spectrum here. If you're sitting at home going, but this guy, you're missing my point. You're missing his point. We're not talking politics here. It doesn't matter what side you're on. We're all on the same team, even though it might not feel that way. And if you're going, but, you've fallen into the trap that we're talking about.
Right.
Right. And as we said earlier, you can support any of those candidates fully and be fully against the other candidate. I have no problem with that. That's your God-given right. But we are all on the same team. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking that that's not true. That's my big problem, is that people are fooling us into thinking we have to fight. Listen, world politics have just proven we don't need to fight each other, right? There's plenty of evil out there, right? So
it's that thing. Chris, talked about it. My dad, did some work there for John Murtha back in the day. They were good friends growing up, and my dad said, whoever you vote for, whoever wins, you always support that person. And that's what I've always done. I've always saw that. I want the leaders of our country to do great things and keep us out of harm's way and make decisions that are practical, for the force. I just think that a lot of people today on both sides, I just got on Crenshaw, Navy SEAL, the whole thing, and he's making money hand over fist, which is great. I guess he can do that, but you should be representing the people. It just should be a selfless service job. That's how I think, and it shouldn't be, you shouldn't run for political office because you can think like, okay, what can I do on the end? It's like a military officer wanting to make general. So, when they retire, they can you go consult for Boeing. I just think it's just the wrong thought process. So I'll leave it at that.
Let me just, there's a great story I'm going to tell you guys from politics, and it's very much what America should be, because we are a beacon of hope for so many around the world, whether we like it or not. For all our imperfections, and there are numerous, we are still a beacon of hope for people. We are still a country that people can come to and experience opportunity, right? They can do it. Is it always easy? No. Is it always the best? No. But I will say that post World War II, Dwight Eisenhower becomes president in 1952. And Dwight Eisenhower, who led one of the greatest military coalitions in the history of the planet, with egos that, again, would make divas on the strip blush. he put them together and he made them a winning coalition. When he became president of the United States, the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress and were going to for the next 40 years. Eisenhower didn't see that. What he saw in front of him was, I need to get X, Y, and Z done. I need to get this highway bill passed. I need to do all these things, right? I need to improve. I need to transform the country, because that's what they were doing. So there's a story, and I'm not so, I know there's some part of it that's more than accurate than others, but there was a story that John Eisenhower, Sam Rayburn from Texas, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, and Lyndon Johnson, who was President of the Senate, Senate Majority Leader, would go to the White House on a regular basis. It was usually, I think, on a Friday after the legislative day was done, and they drink bourbon and branch water with Eisenhower in the White House. And it was sometimes in the South Lawn, it was sometimes in the Oval Office, wherever it was. And they would discuss the issues that were blocking things getting done. Or they'd simply sit around and, do what old guys did back in the day and just, complain about stuff. And so things like that got done. And I think that the reason why it got done is they all shared in some way. They found, and this is what I've always tried to do, is find some way to connect with a person, whether it's, JB's a great example. I loved hearing his stories about being in the military, and I wanted to hear those stories, but it was my way of trying to connect and build a relationship. And largely because I liked him, he's a great guy to hang around with. He's the most positive person I've ever met, but also that I got hope and promise and the ability to move forward that day and do what's next, largely because of that. And I think these conversations that Eisenhower had were, okay, we disagree fundamentally on so many things, and yet we got one goal in mind,
right?
And that's to make the country better, to transform the country into something that makes it a true world power that can project democracy around the world, and whatever that phrase was, whatever that means, right? But that's the difference, is that it's that finding that 1 ounce of connective tissue that you can say, I get where you're coming from. I understand where we disagree, but more importantly, I think I see a venue which we do disagree. In the John Murtha example, when you talked about that for the first time, I thought, see, this is a guy who gets it. He understands that politics and policy are never the same thing, right? That the country is ultimately, we always have to have the best interests of those around us in mind, because ultimately, when you're on a team, it's not about you. It's right. About doing what's best for the
leadership.
I was just going to say that if we closing out, because we're kind of out of time here. I was just saying,
sure.
Coaches, players, just listen to that.
Leadership.
Take the politics out of it for a second. Equate it to sports. If you're a coach of a team, it's not about you. Not about you. It's about the players. It's about the team. It's about the staff. It's about everybody. Be a servant leader. And Chris, I think you're right that the best leaders understand that, and then they do what they have to do to make sure that they accomplish the goals. Chris, again, we're out of time. That was awesome.
Oh,
this is
yeah,
fun.
That went quick.
It always does. But I got to close it out now because JB's giving me the death stare. And no, I'm just kidding, JB.
No, come on.
Yeah, I'm totally joking. I like to rib you. But listen, that was a wonderful episode, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Chris, you're great. You're great. Thank you so much. We should have him on again, because this is
part 2.
This is it's an educational lesson for all of us.
Yeah, we can talk about the beauty of what the EU is all about. That's always fun.
All right, everybody.
Guys, so much.
Thank you too. That's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Trades for Life, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. Again, you can learn more about the organization at pivotalmomentsmedia.com. Check it out for more inspirational, entertaining, and educational content. For Chris Lee and JB Spizzo, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes wherever podcasts can be heard. Like, subscribe, give us the 5-star reviews. Make it happen. See you next time on Win.
Or we'll find you if you don't.
Thanks so much for listening to this edition of Win Championship Trades for Life. If you like what you heard, go ahead and hit that subscribe button or that like button wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, pivotalmomentsmedia.com. And remember, Win is part of Grit, a Pivotal Moments Media channel which is working to break the stigma surrounding mental fitness in sports. Again, visit pivotalmomentsmedia.com for more episodes, content, and education on how we can tackle that challenge together. Keep climbing, and we'll see you on the next episode.